All right, guys, so it's been a little while since we've posted, and I apologize for that. We've wanted to throw an episode together on kind of what our build plans are for the car. And I wanted to show you guys some of the parts and some of the stuff so you can see what we're talking about and where we're going. I've had a lot of parts that were on order. There are some of them that were on order, took over a month and a half to get here. It's been a little bit slow lately. Turns out there's been some problems with some of the major carriers. I guess there's things are kind of slow. They've been in some negotiations from what I understand. But we've actually got a picture of some of those negotiations, and we'll put it up here in the video somewhere. And I think you'll understand that our packages or theirs, something like that, are in good hands. Good hands either way. So anyhow, beyond the shipping struggles, we finally had a bunch of stuff come in, and we'll take a look at that here in a minute. But let's take a second to talk about the car and the direction that we're going to go with it. So the car, in today's world, I know everybody talks about getting cars for $100 or whatnot. So we paid, I think it was $700 for the car, and it had a title, which is really important. So in our state, it's a little bit difficult to get titles for things. It used to be a little bit easier, but they've definitely gotten more strict on titling. So that was a big advantage for the car. The second thing was I really wanted a car that had a certain amount of original paint left on it. I didn't want an old repaint or something that had a bunch of body work. So we were going for a look, and that's what we got. So that was a big win for us, and it was the year range of car. It was the right look. It had a title. Really wasn't a terrible price. The bad to the car, it came out of Minnesota. If any of you know anything about cars that come from Minnesota, you'll know the amazing amount of rot that you're usually going to find in them, and you guys have seen that in the floorboards. Not a huge deal though. This is something that I've dealt with before. Would it be easier to get a better car? And in the long run, if you were actually going to make the thing 100% correct, throw floorboards in it, throw a trunk at it, yes, to tell you the truth, in the long run, buying a better car to start with would be cheaper. But we wanted something to get together, get it running, get it out there, let the kids have a good time with it. So this is what we got. This is what we have for a starting spot. And what we're going to do is kind of a budget build on the car. So unfortunately, as the receipts have come in for the parts, what I thought of for budget kind of went a little bit out the window, but you know, we've saved up for it. It's not a big deal. The stuff that I've gotten, I think will make it easier to show people how to bolt one of these together. Granted, there would be cheaper ways to do it if you build everything yourself, and I understand that. But I also kind of want this to be a guide for somebody who's interested in getting into the hobby that maybe doesn't have all the fab tools. It needs to buy a bolt-in set of motor mounts, you know, a bolt-on brake kit, so on and so forth. And I think this is kind of, in my mind, the better way to do it, or the easier way for somebody. So hopefully this project will be a guide to somebody else who's interested, and maybe it'll take some of the apprehension out from people taking on a project like this. So we'll look at what we have for motor mounts, for axle options. I'll go ahead and explain some of the things that are unique challenges to this body style, such as the rear end. We'll take a look at some of those things. And as we go along, we'll share kind of what we're doing, and hopefully this turns into maybe a way that people can look at an easy way to get into the hobby. So let's take a look at these parts and see where we go from there. All right, so we have some guest stars today. We've got some of the ladies making their way by. So if you hear something in the background, that's what you're hearing. So first thing we have here is, this is a swing pedal mount, a booster mount from It's a CPP part, but I got it from Speedway. They had the best price on it. Compass is a pretty cool kit. Has all the hardware, even has a brake light switch in it. A little bit of everything. But here's actually the brake pedal, and this plate will mount on the firewall. There's actually a knockout plate in it. We'll go take a look at that in a minute, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. But mounts right to the firewall, and it braces off the bottom of the dash. So, all right, so here is the plate that I was just talking about on the swing brake kit for the power booster. So this plate, if I can get my finger to work right, here will go in place of this plate on the firewall. So pretty easy bolt-in stuff. Maybe I shouldn't say that yet because I haven't used one of these kits, but that is where the power booster will go. Looks like a pretty clean setup with all the parts included. So we're pretty happy with that. The underfloor master cylinder works, and I've got another 50 Chevy that I've got with original brakes on it, but it's a pain to service, and it takes room because I want to put dual exhaust on this. So it'd be nice to have that area underneath the floorboard to run the dual exhaust through. So anyway, I got that from Speedway Motors. It is, I believe, a CPP part, and here is part numbers. The second thing I got from them was actually a disc brake kit. So I was going to just get a set of the caliper brackets. So what these do is these actually mount on the stock spindle, and they'll accept a standard GM caliper. Well, the parts vehicle that I have coming for this, I took a look at the brakes, and everything was hashed. And by the time that I went through and got new rotors, new calipers, this thing came with bearings, hoses, heck, dust caps, all the bolts, and then it actually comes with this set of, these are bearing adapters, so that you can run the modern bearings on the 53 spindles. Part numbers again. Bought it through Speedway Motors, and at the end of the day, when I priced out all the individual components, it was cheaper to just buy the kit, and then we know we've got fresh brakes on the car. Because like I said, I do want this to be safe. So brand new calipers in the box, like I said, hoses, bearings, the whole works. Pair of new rotors, and these are, so these would be the same rotors that would be on like a, I don't know, a 72 Camaro. So easy part store stuff that I can go grab. For engine mounts, Transdap makes this kit. There's a number if everybody's interested in doing the same thing. I guess this is upside down, but slips over the frame, and you can actually bolt these in, which I might do because I'd like to put a 235 back in this someday. I've got one that's been balanced. I've got the head ported by Lingenfelter, kind of a hot rod little motor, but right now it's faster and easier to drop a 350 and a turbo 350 trans in, which we'll bring you over and look at that after a while. And we want to get this thing done. The biggest thing is if your car is sitting in the driveway while you're waiting on dream parts, you don't get to enjoy it. We can drop this motor in, I can bolt these motor mounts in, I can take them out again later. It's not a big deal. Move them, change them, but we're going to get the car on the road before the snow flies. So that's kind of our goal with that. Trans mount, I don't even remember. I think this is for probably like a 70s Chevy pickup. They're a pretty standard mount. Amazon special, $9. Good cheap stuff. We'll crawl underneath the car and I'll show you kind of what my plans are for building a trans mount underneath there. All right, guys, so here's a view underneath the car, and I said I'd tell you what I was planning for the transmission cross member. So these cars actually have, I don't know if you can see, they have a K member, and it's kind of structural to the frame. It keeps them from twisting. I have built different cross members and whatnot for these and taken out all the original And I don't know, maybe that's something I'll do, but I think my first plan is to come in here and we'll cut this off right about here, right behind where this other cross member or K member comes into it. We cut it off and we're going to plate across and space up for the transmission. I don't remember because it's been so many years where the transmission, I think it actually has to come back a little bit for the mount to go to that turbo 350, but we'll figure that out as we go. So let's go around here and take a look at what we're going to do for rear axle. So I've got a G-body rear axle. Well, I got a whole car that I'm going to use for, going to pull the seats out of it. I'm going to use that booster and master cylinder to go with the brake kit that I showed you before. But so we needed to switch this car over to an open drive line. I'm not, some of you may be aware, but these early 50s Chevys had what was called a torque tube, and it's nearly impossible to hook up to a modern transmission. I'm sure somebody's done it, but it's not feasible, right? So I went to POL, and that is actually the parts number for the purge kit. But so here are weld-on purchase for the axle. So these cars actually have a narrow, they're 1 3/4 inch wide leaf spring, and then the centering pin is actually offset on them because with that torque tube it actually pivots on the leaf spring. There's a plate on there and a bracket. So this offset hole actually will help you get the axle centered in the fenders. So you can tell when somebody hasn't offset the hole. If you look at one of these cars that somebody's done and they threw a rear end in it, and you'll notice, I think it runs them forward. I'll have to look once I'm underneath there, but you'll see that the axle is not centered in the opening, and these holes that are offset is what will fix that. So spring mounts or perches, you got your plate with your shock mount, the whole works. And then we are going to run the oh so controversial lowering blocks on this car in the rear. I know there's some people that don't like them. It's a matter of opinion. The motor we got for this thing is apparently a 75 Chevy 75 C10 motor, 4-volt main, 350. Looks like it's advertised at 145 horsepower. So we're not going to go do anything too wild with this car. We'll be just fine with the lowering blocks. They've been running a lot of these cars. As long as everything's good and clean and tight and you watch them, it'll be fine. It'll be absolutely safe enough. So, all right, for a wire harness for the car, and I don't know if I'm going to regret this or not. So what I got was, it's one of the Amazon specials. It's a 21 circuit, and it's got both flashers molded into the fuse block. It was $69 with the whole, what was it, Prime Day or Amazon Day, whatever the hell they call that. Anyhow, they give you some pretty entertaining instructions with it, but I'm gonna try it. We'll see what happens. I know it's not the quality of an American Auto Wire or one of those other big brands, but it's also not $600 or $700. Some of the things that it does have that I do like, I looked at some of the crimps on the back, and they actually look pretty decent. I mean, there's some that are a little long on the insulation or on the strip, kind of like that, but they seem solid. Some of them I noticed didn't even have the block labeled for what they were, but this one does, so I was kind of happy to see that. And I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but they're actually, if I can get in there, trunk light. So they're actually labeled along the wires. I checked, and it looks like the lightest wires in it on some of the light circuits look like a 16 gauge. There is some 14 gauge stuff in there, and you know, of course, there's some 10 to some of the heavier circuits. So the wiring or the wire gauge does not look horrible. They're labeled. The crimps look pretty decent. At the end of the day, 69 bucks for that much wiring. I'll take out the circuits that I am not going to use, so I don't have a big mess in the car. But to put this much wiring and a circuit block together for 16 bucks or 69 bucks, you're just not going to do. So they also gave you, it came with a bag of headlight connectors and such, and these are probably a 14 gauge, so I think it's going to work. And I'll be honest with you guys, as we go along, we get this car going, if this is a terrible choice in life and I've just wasted my money and my effort on it, I will let you guys know. I want this again to be kind of a guide of sorts for people, or if somebody wants to get into doing this, a way to do it. I'm going to try to do this without using a welder if possible. So when I do the rear end, I'm going to actually bring it over. I've got a buddy that has a welding shop, and I'll go use his welder over there, or something of that nature, or I'll give you guys a price on it. So that way, if somebody wants to do one of these 49 to 54 Chevy cars, I'll give you an honest list, and I'm keeping track of everything. And so once we get the car going, we'll do an episode that shows how much everything was, or I'll do a price breakdown. I'll tell you after ordering these parts that you see on this table, and I've got some other stuff coming yet, it's not as budget as I thought it would be. It's been a few years since I've built a car, and the numbers, they definitely add up. We're north of $2,000 into the car at this point right now, which probably is pretty good, but anybody who's built a car before knows that all the small incidentals will definitely run ahead, and they're going to catch up to us in a hurry. So let's go take a look at the radiator that I've got. All right, so on for my other questionable purchase, so this is an Amazon radiator. I know, I get it. So I took the original radiator up to our local radiator shop. So honestly, they're closing down like crazy. There's one guy left around here that does them, and he looked at it, said that the amount of deterioration in the core, it needed a core, and it was going to be like $450 for that. So I was cruising through eBay, and I found this guy for $144, and it came with an electric fan. Honestly, probably not going to use the electric fan, because typically those really cheap ones like that don't move enough air, and they're problematic. But let's take a look at this radiator. And so this is aluminum. It's kind of weird. They went back and they actually painted it silver after they welded it, and I don't understand why they did that. It's beyond me, but whatever. So I guess a grinder and paint make me the welder I ain't. But this is actually some of the worst welds on the entire thing. You can see the undercut in this one, and somebody was having a bad day at the end of that, or that's their tack weld, I'm not sure. But the rest of the welds look pretty good. Probably the biggest point of concern that I have is with an aluminum radiator, I don't know if I can get enough light in there, it's got 3 rows of 1/2-inch tubes. So typically aluminum radiators work better with a larger tube, where the old copper and brasses, you could get away with that smaller tube style. So I don't know. Again, I've got 150 horsepower 350, small area 350 that's going in this. I don't need a lot of cooling capacity. I'm hoping this will be okay. If it's not, I will absolutely let you guys know. I'll put a screenshot up of exactly which company this was that I got it from, and that way if it works or doesn't work, again, I'll be honest, I'll let you know. It did fit in the car very well. It's sitting down a little bit. I don't have bolts in it because it's just going to come right back out, but both holes lined up. It's in the car, and it actually has trans cooler built into it. Pretty decent looking outlets, so I don't think it's going to leak. Hopefully it'll give enough cooling capacity. Again, If this doesn't work, I'll let you guys know. I'll be honest, I may have just wasted $144 on it, but if it works, it's a pretty good deal. So we'll see from there. Actually, I just noticed that the drain on it actually matches, if I can get to focus, the bump out for the stock drain. So they did a pretty good job copying it as far as size goes. It's a bolt-in deal. All right, so this is our engine transmission. It's really nothing too spectacular, just an old 350 and a turbo 350 trans. I got this from a friend of mine. He had it in a DeSoto that he was working on. He's doing an LS swap in it now. Not even sure what I gave him for it. Probably a bottle of whiskey. Who knows? It came with a gasket kit also, which is good because it's definitely been leaking a bit, and we're gonna have to go through it. So transmission is just your standard garden variety turbo 350. It's a long tail shaft. Good thing about that is the long tail shaft turbo 350s are within probably a half an inch of a 700 R4. So when if the day comes that I decide to put a 700 R4 in the car, the drive shaft length would be correct. And that's only with that, I think it's a 9-inch tail shaft. They're pretty obvious if you got a long or a short. The motor itself, when I looked at the casting codes down here, if it'll focus on it, and there's another code on the back of the bell housing right here. Once I got both of those plugged in, determined that this is a 75 350 out of a pickup. Likely to be a 4-bolt main, but we'll find that out pretty shortly here. Cast iron divorce choke, GM manifold, and it's got this oddball Holley. I think they call it an economizer, 450 CFM carb. Unfortunately, the throttle shaft in it's bent, and so we've got a replacement for it. We'll throw actually a manifold on also, but HEI distributor, kind of standard stuff. There's a truck water pump, the long pump, nothing too remarkable. All right, here is the manifold and carburetor we're going to throw at it. These are Craigslist find from a pretty cool dude. We drove up this morning and went and picked them up from the guy, but just your 1406 standard issue Edelbrock carburetor and just a performer intake. So again, nothing's going to set the world on fire, but be a good intake to throw on the carb and get rid of that heavy cast iron and get to an electric choke. And I've had these hanging around for quite a while. I don't know, I got bored one day and outlined the valve covers, or the letters on the valve cover, but a pair of Chevrolet script that actually has a PCV port and the bigger oil fill. So we'll wire brush those down, strip them down, and I think we're going to do gold on the engine. So I'll do those in gold, and we'll do the letters or the script in black. So stay tuned for upcoming episodes, and I think in the next one we'll start the tear down of the engine and start getting it cleaned up, get the trans cleaned up, throw gaskets in it, and make it look like something that belongs in the car. Come here, I want to see what you've done something.